Hello, friends. Welcome back. So today I wanted to talk about 3 ways pendulation is super valuable in a session when you're doing somatic experiencing. So I have a lot of clients that as I'm entering, in fact, this month, I'm finishing up my first year of somatic experiencing. I'm entering my second year, which I'm super excited about. And so I have some clients that do somatic experiencing with me when we're doing life coaching sessions. Some don't. Some just want to do coaching, and that's completely fine. Somatic experiencing is something that somebody has to want to do, right? But I wanted to explain pendulation a little bit because I feel like when we understand the value of different modalities, then they make sense to us. And if they make sense to us, then we stick with it. I know with myself, when I don't understand something, I might try something to see how it is. But if I don't fully understand it, I don't tend to stick with it. And when we don't stick with it long enough, we don't see the benefit. So, 3 reasons why pendulation is so powerful and why it's so good to learn. Anyone that has been through trauma has been flung outside of their window of tolerance. So you think of if this is your window of tolerance, right? And this is the flow. Well, let me see. This is the flow of your window of tolerance. So there's a nice flow of activation and deactivation. And that's completely normal. Like nobody's like this. Okay. It's not how it works. Everyone is we're activating, we're deactivating. And when you've been through trauma, you're flung outside of that window of tolerance. You're either flung really high up, where you're stuck in anxiety, where you're stuck in hypervigilance and overwhelm, or you're flung really low into hypoactivity, which is like depression, dissociation, feeling numb, feeling disconnected. And sometimes, because of trauma, sometimes you're flung from one to the other. So instead of a nice flow, it's more like you're flung so high up, then you're slammed back down, then you're flung so high up, and it's not pretty. It doesn't feel good. It feels overwhelming to the body. It feels as if you are literally taking your body and flinging it from the ceiling to the floor and back and forth. That's what trauma does to your nervous system. So if my client is wanting to do somatic experiencing, I'll always let them know that I might interrupt them as they're talking to pendulate, because what happens is in the session, your client can fling way up to hyperactivity, and they're talking about the trauma, and they're activating things that are related to trauma, which is why oftentimes people that have been through trauma hate therapy, because they wind up feeling so activated. They leave and they feel awful because they have all of this activation, whether it's going hyper or hypo, where maybe they just disconnect in a session and then they leave and it takes them days to feel like they are reconnected to their body. So in other words, when you're talking about trauma, right, you're consciously doing it. So your brain is listening. And since the trauma has dysregulated your nervous system, once you're flung up, it's really hard to come back down. Or once you're disconnected, it's really hard to feel like you have that energy again. And so when we're working with a client and we do pendulation, we are almost helping the person's nervous system to remember how to do that. Okay. It's like your nervous system doesn't know how to keep you in that flow. So the client gets activated, and then we pendulate and we help that client come back down. They get deactivated. We help them to get that energy back in their body. So we're helping their nervous system to do what it's originally supposed to do. And the awesome thing that happens is that your nervous system starts to notice what you're doing. And it's like, oh, I can do that way better than you. And then it jumpstarts the body's natural ability to keep you in your window of tolerance. So that is one of the benefits. Now, I'm not going to lie, a lot of clients, when they're doing somatic experiencing and they start to get really activated, it's almost cathartic to allow yourself to just go and to allow anything to happen. And the reason is because your body's used to those emotions, whatever anger, whatever pain, whatever abandonment that you're feeling that's coming up, it's familiar to the body. And so it feels good. But just because it's cathartic doesn't mean that it's healing you. So when we're doing somatic experiencing, the cathartic isn't as helpful as really helping the nervous system to release the energy, the survival energy from the inside. Now that's for a whole nother video. But anyway, that's one of the benefits of the pendulation is retraining your nervous system to have that natural flow. The second reason why pendulation is so powerful in a somatic experiencing session is because the areas of your brain that store and compartmentalize your trauma, there's no time in those areas. So when you're talking about trauma and you start feeling like you're going outside of your window of tolerance, right? You're either getting hyper or hypoactive. Then what's happening if you allow that to continue without helping your nervous system is your brain goes in the past. So you might be in a session, or I'll say I might be in a session with somebody, and if that's what's happening inside of them, their body is there, and we see each other on Zoom, right? Because I do Zoom sessions. We see each other on Zoom, their body is there, I see them, but their brain is literally in the past, and they are feeling that trauma from with the intensity they felt when they were there at the time that the trauma occurred. And that is re-traumatizing to the body. So as somatic experiencing practitioners, we want to make sure that we aren't re-traumatizing our clients. And so pendulation helps us to help our client to keep 1 foot in the present and 1 foot in the past. We can't help a client to overcome trauma if they have both feet in the present, because honestly, the trauma isn't in the here and now. It's alive because of a story that is stored in the body, and the body is the subconscious mind. So we can't completely work through trauma with both feet in the present. We cannot work through trauma with both feet in the past, because that leads me to the third reason why pendulation is so valuable. And it's because by helping the client to not get to such a state of activation in their nervous system, it helps to keep both sides of the brain online. When we are overactivated or underactivated or flung outside of our window of tolerance, we're basically experiencing an emotional flashback. It's an emotion from the past that is associated with that trauma that's kicking on in the moment to such an intensity that what brain scans have helped us to understand is that when we're experiencing that flashback, the left side of the brain goes offline. And when you're in that state where you're in what's known as a half brain state, you can't work through trauma, because all you have is your emotional center, or what some people call child mind. You don't have your adult mind online. If you don't have both online, this is what it would be like. Let's say I'm walking through the woods and I see a stick, right? And all of a sudden, let's say I have an intense fear of snakes because I was bitten as a child at 5 years old by a snake. All of a sudden, my nervous system kicks on, goes into hyper or hypo reaction because of the memory of what happened. My survival brain was like, that looks like a snake, and this is what happens with snakes, and this is what we do because of that. And so now I'm basically in the past, I'm in an emotional flashback. If that emotional flashback is so strong, even after I see that it's a stick, my body doesn't respond. It doesn't come back down. It doesn't relax, or I don't come back into my body, because the left side of my brain is not giving the information. The information is not flowing to my right side of the brain to calm that piece down. Whereas if I have both sides of my brain online, I will feel the emotional reaction because of the fear of the past, of what happened when I was 5. But then the logical part of my brain will be like, oh, Michelle, chill. Like, that's a stick. You're fine. It's all good. And all of a sudden I'll feel my nervous system come back down. So if that happens and a person goes into an emotional flashback in a session and they aren't able to get that left side of their brain back online, they're not coachable at that moment. And again, if that were to happen, then that's re-traumatizing to someone. I say this so that anyone that's doing somatic experiencing, sometimes what I've noticed is that there's resistance to pendulation because it's almost like, well, what's that going to do? No, I want to let all this emotion out. But when you realize, hopefully by realizing what happens when you do that, or what happens when you don't pendulate, hopefully you will see the importance of learning how to retrain your nervous system so that you can work through the trauma. Again, the key is without re-traumatizing yourself. And yeah, so I hope this video explains it.